I should be in employment right now. Like, I need to be in employment, but I can't be in employment right now. So my dad's health has got kind of significantly worse recently, and they've just needed me more than I could balance the job and here. What is always forgotten is any cutbacks for our support systems. So whether that's the care workers or whether that's kind of charity cutbacks, what happens is all of those people that access that support have to then rely on their family. And it's never considered, it's never mentioned that actually, if my mum doesn't go to counselling, I'll become her counsellor. If my dad doesn't get a physiotherapist, I'll be the physiotherapist. I'm Karina Andrews, and I am a carer for my parents in Bristol. I started caring for my mum when I was 5 because my sister was born and my mum started to get poorly with her kind of mental health. And then around, I think it's like 10 years ago now actually, my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So I also provide care for him as well now. It would actually be incredible to have 24-hour support, but it costs a lot. That would be a kind of lived-in carer, for instance, and you would need a room for them, which we don't have. And also financially, we couldn't cover the cost. What we have been able to cover the cost of is for care workers who come in for about 15 minutes throughout the day. I mean, it was a huge fight for my dad to get the care workers. Me and my mum were just absolutely exhausted. We were providing more and more personal care for my dad. My dad also didn't want that, so he was often trying to do things himself and then falling and having accidents. My mum's mental health and physical health were really deteriorated as well because of the level of care my dad needed. And I was on the phone all the time trying to say, look, we're struggling, and we don't know what to do. And I just kept getting, well, you're on the waiting list, or we'll see, I'm sorry, things are difficult at the moment, or just closed doors really. And in the end I just said, I'm really sorry, Dad, I'm just gonna have to take you to A&E and leave you there. That was the only way we were being listened to, because it was costing them then. All 3 of us would have definitely been in hospital if that continued, because we were just exhausted, absolutely exhausted. I should be in employment right now. Like, I need to be in employment, but I can't be in employment right now. So my dad's health has got kind of significantly worse recently, and they've just needed me more than I could balance the job and here. So the main concern at the moment is my dad climbing the stairs, and care workers aren't able to help people on the stairs because of their own safety. So when my dad needs the bathroom, he needs someone here to support him up the stairs. Well, I can't work, I can't get a job and just say, oh, sorry, Dad's called, I need to go and help him up the stairs. Like, it's not, I don't expect an employer to be that flexible, or whether they can even be that flexible. It just feels like a cycle where there's not really many answers. There's not kind of a solution. Also, I'm not actually entitled to carer's allowance because my mum receives it. Because it's one per family, but it's £1.90 an hour for a 35-hour week. It's not going to cover my house, like my rent. It's not going to cover it doesn't even cover, I think, a weekly food bill. I think the cost of living is another thing on this kind of pile of challenges. I mean, we're still overcoming COVID with the fact that my dad is still at high risk of COVID and the impacts of COVID. We're still coping with Brexit because lots of the care workers have left, and we're still coping with that kind of employment crisis around care workers. So all these things haven't suddenly been resolved, and we've just got another thing on top. I think definitely because of their disabilities, there's added costs. We do use more heating. The heating is always on in this house and needs to be, especially for my dad, to keep his kind of temperature right, because with Parkinson's he can't regulate that himself. Also, yeah, with electricity, so he's got a hospital bed that he uses regularly. We might be getting a stair lift at some point, so that will use electricity also. And then covering the cost of travel. So my car is, my poor car is used an awful lot. And then also kind of covering the cost of it's kind of my time, I guess, and like my time picking up medication, doing physio, like all of the things that they need needs my time, and therefore that's time away from gaining money, really. Yeah, we don't have any of the kind of TV subscriptions. We don't have any like luxury costs. So what do we then need to just eat less, or kind of, yeah, I don't know, wrap my dad up in blankets rather than heat the house? What is always forgotten is any cutbacks for our support systems. So whether that's the care workers or whether that's kind of charity cutbacks, what happens is all of those people that access that support have to then rely on their family. And it's never considered, it's never mentioned that actually, if my mum doesn't go to counselling, I'll become her counsellor. If my dad doesn't get a physiotherapist, I'll be the physiotherapist. So if the pharmacy can't continue to drop off the medication, I will have to go and pick up the medication. And I think it's never remembered that actually any cutbacks, well, there will always be a family member behind it that's had to pick up that job and potentially stop something else because of it.
If like the crisis keeps going on, how do you predict that's going to impact you and your parents?
I guess the first thing is that I'm not going to be able to afford to live out of the home, which means I'm going to have to move back in with my parents. But that could also impact their benefits and their allowance anyway, because I would then be another adult in the house. So if I then worked and lived here, that could impact what their income is. So it's like that balancing act of how we manage that.
If you compared it to where you were when you had to admit your dad to A&E, do you feel as though how things are progressing that you could get back to that point?
Having a job was a break for me. Like I love working. So now not having a job, I have to spend more time here. There's more, we're having to figure out with the carers that we can't increase them because of the cost. So who's going to cover that extra kind of care? With the panic as well, like that affects my mum and dad. They both have kind of mental health issues. So how to keep them calm in this situation as well, when actually I'm panicking also. And just the build up of my dad's health is going to get worse. How do we continue that care at this level of funding, really?